Will your favorite NFL team go over or under their win total in 2025? Welcome, football fans, to my ranking of every win total. And you're probably asking, Mitch, what does that mean? How do you rank win totals? I'm ranking every win total from the one that I wouldn't bet to the one that I would bet. In other words, the one that if you gave me all the money in the world, I would still say, no, I don't want to bet this. To I would bet my life savings, my house, my family, everything on this bet because it's gonna cash. So if that makes sense, and you're excited for more BLV NFL tier rankings, then Gronk, spike the like button. If you aren't already and you're just tuning in for the first time, maybe you're tuning in for the 15th time, but you've been a jabroni the first 14 times. I've given you an opportunity. I'm giving you the opportunity of a lifetime right now to not be a jabroni and subscribe to the Bottom Line View. Also, hop in the comments. We're live 2 days in a row, 2 nights in a row to talk some NFL 2025 predictions. So let's get it. We're talking win totals for every NFL team, going from least confident to most confident. Let's break it down and let me know where you agree and let me know where you disagree in the comments. Okay. These are the tiers. Shout out to Singh and Christian who are first in the chat. Shout out to you guys. Thank you for joining here live on a Monday night in early August. Okay, so we have the F that category as the furthest away from a best bet. There's no chance. I am not betting this. You can't make me bet this. I do not care. F that. No thanks. I'd rather not bet this. Lean. I lean this way. I like this bet to a certain degree, but I'm not going. Most likely it's a small bet or it's not a bet at all, but this is the way that I would advise you, okay? A principal bet is a bet that I would make simply based on the foundations of this team. I believe in their quarterback, their coach. Maybe they have an easy schedule. Maybe this team regularly goes above their win total. Maybe there's something about this team that I like. So I have to bet a certain way out of principle, okay? Then we have a good bet. This is a good bet. This is plus EV. This is good money spent, okay? I would bet this, okay? Then we have a lock. This is a stone cold lock. Throw away the key out the window. It's going to happen. I wouldn't bet my house on it, but it's pretty damn close. I might bet my car on it, okay? Then we have bet my house. Self-explanatory. This is the biggest of the big bets. This is the home runs. You got to bet this or you're a jabroni, okay? Get in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about my picks. Okay. Shout out to Austin in the chat. And my boy Diddy in the chat too. Okay. Let's go. So the first team, we have the New Orleans Saints. The Saints win total is listed at 5.5. I do not cover baseball. I only cover the NFL on YouTube currently. The New Orleans Saints. I would put the Saints, they are very high here in terms of I would bet this. Now, the question is, do I bet my house on the Saints going under? Or do I bet just a lock? Do I bet my car, bro? Because either way, I'm betting the Saints to go under 5.5. I do not see a world where the New Orleans Saints win 6 games. But because the number is so low, it's hard for me to say that I would bet my house on it. So I need to think about this, okay? We have a new head coach. We have a new quarterback. The quarterback that is expected to start is Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck currently is not getting all the first-team reps as a second-round rookie over Jake Haener, and that's pretty concerning, okay? There's still a competition entering preseason among the three quarterbacks in New Orleans. That's concerning because we saw both of them play last year, and they both suck. Rattler and Haener. Now, I like their receivers. I think Kamara can still play. Their tight ends are manageable. Their offensive line is young. It has upside. Kellen Moore's a good play caller. I'm not sure he has what it takes as a head coach. We will see. I also know that the defense will be pretty bad. It was pretty bad last year. They don't have great corners. They don't have an overwhelming pass rush. I don't think they have a single guy on their defensive line that can get you 10 sacks. Maybe Carl Granderson in his best season. Their linebackers are decent. I just feel like they're in a weak division, which gives them, I guess, a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a ceiling. But it's not a super easy schedule. If you combine a terrible defense with terrible quarterback play, you're definitely going to go under. You're definitely going to go under. I think they're a lock to win about 3 to 5 games. So I'm going to bet my house on it. We're going to go big. First one, right off the bat. We're betting our house on the Saints going under 5.5. Maybe we have already lost our house, but I am betting my house on it. Terrible defense, terrible quarterback. You can't overcome that. I'm sorry. Plus, I think the Falcons and the Panthers have gotten a little bit better. I think the Bucs are legit. So, there it is. The Miami Dolphins. Their win total is at 7.5. My pick for the 7.5 Miami Dolphins is an under. Now, I think that this is probably a good bet to go under 7.5 with the Miami Dolphins. Okay? The Dolphins. The Patriots have gotten much better in their division. That has been 2 easy wins for the Dolphins over the past few seasons. I expect that to change a little bit. My current record projection, by the way, for the Saints guys is 3-14. So I have them 3 games below 5.5, technically, because they would have to win 6 to go above it. So I have them at 3-14, maybe 4-13. Either way, they're under. I currently have the Dolphins at 6-11, which would be under 8. They would have to get 8 wins to go above 7.5. And they play, of course, Buffalo twice, who they've constantly struggled against. They play the Chargers. They play the Ravens. They play the Commanders in Spain. They play the AFC North in general, the Bengals, the Steelers. They also play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, they do play the NFC South, which I guess is a pretty easy division. And they could win some games there. I actually think they'll start the season pretty well. But when I look at their roster, I'm concerned about the offensive line. There's already injuries across the offensive line. Not only is James Daniels coming back from a serious Achilles, but Austin Jackson's already injured. You've got the whole Tyreek Hill, whatever is going on with him, constantly distracting the team. You have the defense with some guys returning on the edge position. Are they healthy? Are they what they were, is what I'm trying to say. Their corner position is one of the worst in football, but they do have a creative offensive mind who can scheme up some things. And when they do have Tua, they have won some games. So there's reason to believe that they could win 8 or 9 games if Tua is fully healthy, if their weapons are fully healthy, they get a manageable offensive line, and their defense does provide a good pass rush. That could get them to 7, 8, 9 wins. That being said, it's probably unlikely that they get 8, 9 wins just because they have like some pretty big weaknesses. Feels like their entire culture and their entire understanding of who they are is falling apart, and it does feel like they've declined to the third best team in their division. So I have them firmly outside of the playoff picture. I have them at 6-11, 7-10. I would take under 7.5. I think that's a good bet. Next, the Baltimore Ravens. Guys, if you haven't already, Gronk spike the like button so more people can find this channel and can find the content. Let's build the community. Let's build the BLV together. Let's do this thing. Also, if you want more betting content on the channel, the way that I know that is by liking the video. There will be plenty throughout the season, but if you want more before the season, then like the video. That's how I know you want more, okay? We've got the Baltimore Ravens up next. I think the Ravens they're high because they're at 11.5. Now, the problem with the number of 11.5 is that injuries could happen. So, like, Lamar Jackson could get hurt for 3 or 4 games, and that would devastate this win total, right? Maybe they're the best team in the NFL, but they only win 11 games because Lamar Jackson misses 3. So that's probably why I wouldn't bet my house on it, although I'm very close. You know, I think this is probably a lock. I might change this depending on how I feel at the end, but for now, I feel like it's a lock. I think that they're bound to be, one of the best teams in football this year, if not the best. My current record projection or prediction for them is 12-5. I have them losing to Buffalo, Kansas City, Cleveland, the Bengals, and the Steelers in their division. They also play the Packers, the Vikings on the road. Those are losable games. They also play Detroit at home and the Texans and the Rams at home, which are also losable. They could potentially beat the Browns, for example, or beat the Steelers, for example, and then lose to the Rams, maybe. But, I think about 12-ish wins. They could also beat the Chiefs this year or beat the Bills this year. That's very possible. I do see them as the most talented AFC team. They do have an elite quarterback. They do have an elite offense. They have probably the best running game in football. They have, I think, probably a top 5 defense. They've improved their pass rush. Their secondary is sick, sweet, and all the other words. So I feel like as long as Lamar plays most of the games, like let's say 85% of the games, I think they can win like 11-ish games. So being that they would only need to win, if Lamar plays all of these games, if he's 100% healthy, they're going to smash. They're going to go over 11.5. They're going to win 12, 13, 14. This is a team that with Lamar has only lost 2 games before in 2019. They went 14-2. I believe they had the best record in the AFC in 2023. They were the number 1 seed. Don't forget about that. So they've also showcased really high potential in regular seasons before as well. And Lamar has nearly been a 3-time MVP. So as long as Lamar is healthy with this roster, this coaching staff, they're probably a lock to go above this. So I have the Ravens as a lock, over 11.5. The Bengals, okay? The Bengals I have as an over 9.5. Their win total's at 9.5. I currently project them for 11 wins. I think this is more of a principle bet, and the reason I'll say that is the principle being Joe Burrow. The principle being bet the over on a team that got unlucky last year and I might actually move this up to a good bet, okay? I might move this up. But it's a principle because you have Joe Burrow, you have Jamar Chase. In my opinion, you have the best pure passing attack in football. And I do expect the defense to get better. I do expect their pass rush to get better. Shamar Stewart's making waves in camp. I do expect their secondary to play better. I've mentioned many times I expect big things out of DJ Turner. I think that the offense as a whole is going to be top 3 to top 5 at minimum in football if Joe Burrow's healthy. One of the concerns, like Lamar, is maybe he could get hurt. We've seen Joe Burrow get hurt a couple times in his career. So that would be a little concerning for me to bet like a outrageous bet my house on it. I might not want to do that if Joe Burrow gets injured. This team falls off quite a bit, okay? But This might be the peak of Joe Burrow. This might be the buy low of the Cincinnati Bengals. How often are we going to be able to get a 9.5 on Joe Burrow in his prime? I'm kind of talking myself into a good bet. I'm kind of talking myself into. I think their ceiling could be 13 wins and winning this division. I think their floor is probably 8-9. So if they can get somewhere in the middle, 10-7, 11-6, I have them at 11-6 currently as my prediction. I have them losing to the Vikings, the Broncos on the road, the Packers on the road, the Steelers, the Ravens, and Cleveland. Okay, they also do play Buffalo. They play Baltimore one more time. I think they'll split, right? They play the Steelers one more time. I think they'll split. They play the Patriots in Cincy. I think they should win that game. Detroit, I think they could win that game as well. I think that's a winnable game. I think they'll beat Detroit or Green Bay. So I'm going to take them to go over. I don't think this schedule is as difficult as some other people think. I think they have some pretty easy games against the Jets, the Bears, the Jags, Cleveland once at least. I think they swept Cleveland last year. Miami later in the year. They should win those games. So I have them at least at 10. So that's a good bet in my opinion. Next, the Denver Broncos, I think, are one of the weaker bets or one of the more difficult for me personally. Their win total set at 9.5. Okay, I think this is like an kind of like an F that or like a no thanks. I'm not quite sure if it's quite impossible to predict on an F that level. But I would feel really bad personally about taking an under for a Sean Payton team with as much talent as this defense has. Because I currently have the Broncos at 10-7, 9-8. So they're basically right on the borderline of their win total, which is 9.5. So I'm gonna say no thanks. I don't know if it's quite an impossible bet to make, but you look at their schedule. Obviously, they play in one of the toughest divisions, maybe the toughest in the AFC. So they have to play the Raiders twice, the Chargers twice, who swept them last year, the Chiefs twice, okay? They got an easy win against the Chiefs later in the year. They probably should have beat them the first time, though, to be fair. They play the Eagles on the road. They play the NFC East as a whole, the Cowboys at home, the Giants, right? They play the Packers at home. They play the Texans on the road. It's not a ridiculous schedule. They play the Bengals, who they did lose to last year, at home. I have them currently losing to the Commanders in Washington, the Packers, the Raiders, the Chiefs, the Eagles, an upset against the Colts in Indianapolis, the Chargers. So I have them at 10-7. But if I were to actually bet this, I think 10-7, 11-6 is probably their ceiling. If I were to actually bet the Broncos, I'd probably lean towards the under, to be honest. I have them beating the Texans. I have them beating the Chiefs once. I have them beating the Chargers once. Their defense is really good, but defense tends to regress. I don't have a lot of confidence in what we're going to get from Bo Nix from year 1 to year 2. And what I mean by confidence is I don't have confidence in a negative or positive way. I don't know if it's going to be really good and a step forward or if it's going to be a step backward, which makes this bet really difficult. I don't know if the offensive line is going to be as good as last year because it stayed completely healthy. And this was a team that was very healthy last year, right? So this is what makes this a very difficult bet. Okay, I like the coaching a lot. I like the defense a lot. But there are areas where they're most successful. I feel like there's a lot of regression that could happen with this team. So and plus the fact that they were the third best team in their division last year. If they're the third best team in their division this year, it's probably unlikely they win 10 games. Just by principle, right? By odds. It's probably unlikely, you know? So, yeah, the Broncos, I'm going to put no thanks. I don't want to bet this. I'm staying away from it. The New York Giants, okay? The New York Giants are sitting at 5.5 as their win total. I would take the under on the Giants win total of 5.5. I would say that this is tough. I'm going to say this is a principal bet. And the reason I say that is this is the most difficult schedule in the NFL. So by principle, despite my liking of the Giants, I would bet the under. I'm also not confident in their quarterback, whether it be Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston. So they don't have a stable quarterback. They have the toughest division in the league, or the toughest, not division, but schedule in the league. They do have a really good defense. They do have a coach who has proven to, do some good things in terms of create a culture and a setting where they can be an upset or a Cinderella darling. The first season that Brian Daboll was with the Giants, they somehow won 9 games and made the playoffs and won a playoff game. So he has a history of putting together a sort of Cinderella season, right? So I don't want to necessarily fade that, but recent years have not gone well for them. They've been one of the worst teams in football. Their offensive line is still pretty tragic. Their run game could be inconsistent. But I do think they have some decent weapons. They do have a very good front seven, an awesome pass rush. And there are games on the schedule that they could win. Could they beat the Commanders and the Cowboys once? That's possible. Could they beat the Saints? That's possible. Could they beat the Bears? That's possible. Could they maybe upset the Patriots or Denver or the Chargers? Could they win one of those games? Could they beat the Vikings at home maybe? Could they beat the Raiders? So there's a lot of tough games. This is the toughest division, toughest schedule in football, right? Niners, Packers, Eagles twice, Chargers, Chiefs, Commanders, Cowboys twice, Lions, Vikings. It's a really hard schedule. So I'm going under, but still, could they squeak a 6? Could Russell Wilson and a good defense squeak 6? Maybe. The Minnesota Vikings are next. The Vikings are sitting at, what? Are they at 8.5 or 9.5? The Vikings, can I even find their win total? We might have to skip this one if I can't find it on my screen here. Let's see. Vikings win total. I'm going to look it up because it's not in my notes. The Vikings win total is set at 8.5. Okay. So 8.5. I think that this is also a principal bet. And the reason I would say that is the Vikings have such good coaching, and last year there was such a good team that I would bet them over. That being said, J.J. McCarthy is one of the biggest wild cards, question marks, and X factors in the entire NFL this year, which makes it very hard for me to trust an over. They could win 7, they could win 8. Who knows? They could have injuries to Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones. We've already seen Jefferson get banged up. Aaron Jones has a history of injuries. Jordan Addison could be suspended, right, for the first few games. TJ Hawkinson's coming off of a major injury. He should be healthier this year. And defensively, they're pretty damn good. But last year, they led the NFL in turnovers, which isn't always a replicatable thing. So they won a ton of close games last year. They had sort of a miracle season led by Sam Darnold, who had a really good year. But will they be able to replicate that? It's easy for me to trust Kevin O'Connell. It's easy for me to trust Brian Flores. I really like their offensive line. I do think they have a top 10 defense. If I were to rank defenses in the NFL, I'd put them somewhere between 6 and 10, I believe. So by principle, if I have them going from 14 wins to 9, that's 5 less wins than last year. They still go over this number. I think I have to bet this. Despite the schedule, despite the division, I still have to make this bet out of faith on the coaching staff and what they were able to build last year. Their schedule is difficult, though. They play the NFC North, which is probably the toughest division in the NFC. Maybe the NFC West, but this one's pretty close. They play the Bengals. I don't think a team like the Falcons will necessarily be easy. They play the Steelers. And the weird thing here is they play in Ireland, I believe, and they also play in Britain. I think they have an England game. So they play two like crazy road games. Then they have a bye. They play the Chargers on the road. They play the Eagles. They play the Ravens. They play Seattle in Seattle, which is never easy. They play the Commanders. So it's not an easy schedule. So I could definitely see them going like 8-9, 7-10 at their worst. But that being said, that's expecting big regression from last year when they won 14 games. So I have them with a principal over 8.5. Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, this is difficult because if you would have told me like a month ago that the Rams are sitting at 9.5, I would have said this is a lock to go over 9.5. Right? But the biggest injury of the offseason right now is Matthew Stafford is hurt. And it appears to be fairly serious. He's not going to be participating in the collaboration practices. I don't remember who they're practicing against, but the joint practices that they're being a part of, he's not even practicing in that. We're not going to see him at all in the preseason, which we wouldn't anyways, but we're expecting him to be all right in week 1. Now, Stafford is older. Stafford could wear down and break down, and that would scare me. That being said, they do have a pretty good backup in Jimmy Garoppolo. Could Garoppolo manage 8 to 10 wins with this group? Possibly. If the defense does take a step forward, if the O-line can protect him and Jackson is okay at left tackle, and they're healthy on the offensive side weaponry-wise. Devontae Adams is getting older but stays healthy pretty consistently. Puka Nacua is more the problem. He's a guy that might miss a couple games, which really hurts their offense. Defensively, again, like they have a lot of upside there. Their pass rush is awesome. I trust Sean McVay a lot. I would say this is a good bet to go over 9.5, but because of Stafford's inconsistencies with the timeline or the understanding of the seriousness of the injury, I can't necessarily advise it as a lock or a bet my house. I can't go that far because if he's hurt, like we might be screwed, right? Now Garoppolo, there's still a hope, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a strong hope that they would go over 9.5 in that division. Okay. And it's not a tough schedule necessarily, but it's not as easy as the Niners schedule, right? Like they still have to play Philly in Philly, Baltimore in Baltimore, in comparison to a team like San Fran who doesn't play either of those teams. They still have to play Tampa. They have to play Detroit. Detroit also doesn't play San Francisco. Even Atlanta in Atlanta, Arizona in Arizona, Seattle in Seattle. None of those games are tough. They play Houston in week 1. What if Stafford's not ready to go? That's probably a loss. So, yeah, I would say it's a good bet. It might even be lower than that, but we'll see. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're sitting at 9.5, the same as the Rams. By the way, guys, I currently have the Rams at 10-7 as my projection, sort of baking in a little bit of Stafford injury risk. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I also have at 10-7. Now, part of that comes down to I think they'll struggle out of the gate. I think that they have 2 tough games in a row. They have Atlanta in Atlanta, who they got swept by last year. And they have Houston in Houston on a Monday night, which I think is a loss. So that's the first 2 games of the year. Okay? They also play Philly within the first 4 weeks of the year. So they could be 1-3. They very well could be 1-3. But they should eventually bounce back. They do also play Detroit. They play San Francisco. They play Buffalo in Buffalo. They play New England. They play the Rams. Those are all tough games. Even Arizona is not easy. So Tampa Bay, I have at 10-7. I think that, what's the timeline for Tristan Wirfs? That could determine some of these early wins or losses. Can they get Chris Godwin back to full health later down the stretch? That would boost them down the stretch. Can their defense get better and more sturdy and consistent? Because last year it was the reason for many of their losses. Can their offense maintain that level of eliteness that they had last year despite losing their coordinator? Can Baker stay at that same level? Can Todd Bowles steer the ship in the right direction for the Bucs? So just the inherent risk with the Bucs is I don't really trust their head coach. I'm not sure what we're going to get from their play caller this year. They do have a couple of key guys injured, and the defense was bad last year. But I think that they're still a 10-win team. I think they're one of those teams, to be honest, that is better than their record is. Like, typically, the last couple of years, they've won about 8, 9, 10 games, right? But they're better than that. Like, so when you do these win totals, like sometimes you have a higher opinion of a team in your mind as a realistic Super Bowl threat, but they don't always win 12, 13 games. The Bucs feel like one of those teams where they'll win like 9 or 10 or 11, but they don't necessarily feel like that. They feel like a 12-win team, but they might win 9 or 10, right? So that's why I have them. I'll put them as a good bet. I think it's a good bet to bet them over, but there are things that kind of scare me at the same time. So I have the Bucs right now at 10-7. Okay, next we have the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are also interesting. You know, today I was kind of like firmly in the camp of, I think this is a bet where I have to bet over, right? But at the same time, they actually do have a really difficult schedule. And if they do really miss Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, this could go a lot worse than people expect, right? And even like the stuff with the Hall of Fame game is kind of scaring me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. That's kind of scaring me a little bit. Like the Hall of Fame game, even like how they look there, just all the penalties, all the dysfunction, this disorganized. I know it's backups, but it still didn't look like the Lions I watched the last 2 years in terms of how they were buttoned up and how they competed. That did kind of like scare me just a little bit. But I think this is a principal over 10.5. Based on what we've seen from this team the last 2 seasons, based on the amount of talent they have, based on the quarterback that they have, I think this is a solid bet to bet over. And guys, if you haven't already, Gronk spike that like button. All right, it does help the channel. It does help the video find more people. So do like the video if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, subscribe as well. The Lions I'm leaning over 10.5. Now, that being said, they play a really difficult schedule. They play the Chiefs, Bengals, and Ravens on the road in the AFC. They play the Eagles in Philly. They play the Commanders in Washington. They play the Vikings twice, the Packers twice, the Bucs at home, but the Bucs, the Rams in LA. This is a tough schedule. I still have them at 11-6. But it's a scary 11-6, right? I have them beating the Chiefs and the Eagles, but I do have them losing to the Ravens and the Bengals, okay? I have them losing to the Commanders, the Packers, and the Vikings. I have them beating the Rams. That could reverse, but either way, you're getting to 10 or 11 wins. Now, that being said, we got to get to 11 and not 10, because this is setting at 10.5. That being said, they won 15 last year. They were the best offense in football last year. They'll probably still be in the top 10, maybe even the top 5, but they probably won't be number 1. Their defense, though, is where you have to expect them to get better. I do think they should get better. I do like a lot of elements of this defense, right? I like their linebackers. I like their safeties. I think that Aiden Hutchinson is a stud. I'm a little concerned about the D-tackle position right now. Levi went down. McNeil's out for a while. This team very well could regress a lot. But they're so talented, and their culture is strong, and they fight their ass off. So I believe that out of principle, I got to put them at 11-6. and I got to have them go over, even if it's bothering me a little bit. I probably wouldn't bet that one. The Chicago Bears. This is one that I actually love. Like, the more that I've thought about it, the more that I've seen Caleb Williams miss targets at practice, the more I'm loving under 8.5 for the Chicago Bears, because a lot of people think this is an over. I love this as an under 8.5. I have them firmly as the worst team in the division. I have them firmly with the worst quarterback in the division. I think that they have a pretty mediocre defense. And I'm not sure that because of the quarterback play, they'll be able to be a good offense consistently. I think the Bears are very overrated right now. I would actually say that this is a lock. The Bears going under 8.5. Now, what scares me is their coaching staff. Ben Johnson, Wizard, Dennis Allen, very good defensive coach. Okay. They also do have a strong offensive line. They have a good group of weaponry. DJ Moore, Colston Loveland as a rookie. I'm expecting good things. Luther Burden, and then also Roma Dunze. The run game could be a bit spotty from that backfield. I'm not sure I'm in love with it. The defense, I think, is solid. Good secondary. Not sure about the pass rush. But the schedule is pretty damn tough. And it's probably the toughest division in the league. I have them currently projected at 7-10. I have them losing, okay, so let's just go through who they play. I don't even have to say who they lose to. They play the Vikings twice, the Packers twice, the Lions twice. Okay? They play the Commanders in Washington, Cincinnati, in Cincinnati, Baltimore, in Baltimore. They even play the Raiders in Vegas, and I have them winning that game. They play the Cowboys at home. I also have them winning that game, but again, not easy. They play the Steelers at home. They play the Eagles in Philly. They play the Niners in San Francisco. Guys, this is a lock. Under 8.5. Bears. Under. Okay? Way too difficult of a schedule. 49ers. 49ers are, of course, for me, you guys know, an over. Their win total is oddly high for a team that was 6-11 last year. But I think Vegas is kind of trying to indicate they're trying to make people bet under. This is what they're trying to do. They've set the number at 10.5 so that it entices you to actually bet the under. Okay? Because when you look at their schedule, even if you don't think the Niners are a legitimate contender, they have the easiest schedule in the NFL, and they play very few good teams. Guys, this is the best teams they play on their schedule. The Houston in Houston, the Rams twice, who are in their own division, the Bucs in Tampa, who they have beaten consistently. Those are the best teams they play. The division winners in the worst divisions in the league. Other than that, they play the Cardinals, the Seahawks, mid teams. They play the Colts, the Titans, the Bears, the Browns, the Panthers, the Giants, the Falcons, who I have them losing to, the Saints. That's an over. And honestly, 10.5 is a large number for a team that only won 6 games and has as many injuries as they typically have. So I can't say it's a bet my house. But this is a lock. I'm going lock on the Niners. Other than the Jets, they play all of the worst teams in the league. And honestly, they might not play a team that is better than them on their entire schedule. You could say that them and the Bucs are the same level. Them and the Rams are the same level. Them and the Texans are the same level. They don't play the Eagles. They don't play the Ravens. They don't play the Lions. They don't play the Bills. They don't play the Bengals. They don't play the Chiefs. They don't even play the Chargers. So to me, that's an over. I'll take it as a lock. The Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles was actually a lot tougher when I dove into their schedule than I would have expected. Obviously, I'm leaning towards an over with probably the best roster in the league, maybe the second best roster, the reigning Super Bowl champs and the current NFC favorites. That being said, they'll need to improve their passing game this year if they want to go over 11.5. And their defense is going to have to be very good. Last year, it was the best in football. Can it maintain that level? We'll see. I have them over with 12 wins, but it's not convincing. So this to me is, it's rather a principal bet or it's a lean. You know what? I might have to move the Lions down. I'm going to move the Lions to a lean. The Eagles are a principal bet based on the fact that they're very talented, based on the fact that they still have the best offensive line in football, based on the fact that they won the Super Bowl last year. I love Vic Fangio's defense. They do have a good quarterback. They do have great weapons. But guys, look at this schedule. So I have them, keep in mind, I have them at 12-5. I have them beating. They play the Chiefs and the Rams back to back. I have them beating both of those teams to get to 12 wins. Because I have them losing to Tampa, who they lost to last year. I have them losing to the Vikings in Minnesota. I have them losing to Detroit. I have them losing to Dallas once and Washington once. That's 5 losses. Now, if you think that they'll beat one of those teams that I said they'll lose to, they play the Chargers in LA on Monday Night Football. They play the Bills in Buffalo. They play the Commanders in Washington. So they play them twice. So they'll lose one of those, I would think. They play the Packers in Green Bay. They play the Rams, the Chiefs, as I mentioned, Denver as well. So that is not an easy schedule. Not an easy schedule. Last year, they had the second easiest schedule or the easiest schedule in the NFC. They had one of the easiest schedules in the NFL last year. Okay? I think the Bills are the one that I think they could lose the most, actually. It's Buffalo, in the cold. That's concerning. And it's Josh Allen. So, yeah, that's a pretty tough team to beat in that weather. But I'm out of principle. I'll bet the Super Bowl champs to hit 12 wins. And I do see them as the winner of their division. And I think to do that, you have to at least win 11 games. You do. The Raiders. The Raiders are next. So the Raiders are one of the toughest ones for me. I'm going to put F that on the Raiders. Their number is 6.5. Now, some may say this is a good bet if you like them to go over. But I currently have the Raiders at 6-11, maybe 7-10. I have them right there. Okay? What bothers me about the Raiders, they play in the toughest division in the AFC. They play against 3 teams that went to the playoffs last year 6 times. 6. Can they manage 2 or 3 wins out of that? Right? They do play the AFC South, which is manageable. Can they manage to beat, to win 3 or 4 games? 3 games in that division. They probably won't sweep that division, but can they win 3 in that division? That would be 6. Then they would have to find a way to beat, Cleveland, which I think they could beat, the Giants, which I think they could beat. So the more that I talk about this, maybe they could get to 7, but I currently have them at 6-11. So they play the Patriots, the Commanders, both on the road early in the year. They play Chicago, and who's the other NFC team? Chicago, and I think the Giants is the other one. They play the Eagles in Philly. They play the Texans in Houston. They play so maybe I would take them at 7. Maybe I would bet them over. Maybe I should boost them up. I'm currently looking at it right now, and I'm kind of like regretting it a little bit. But I have them losing. So the Raiders are difficult. And this is why, like, I can't really bet them either way. Because they have a new head coach. They have a new OC. They have a new quarterback. I don't really know what their offense is going to look like. Their defense, I don't really like on paper. Like, their corners, I'm not a huge fan of. Their safeties, I'm not a huge fan of. Their linebackers stink. Their D-line is bad outside of Max Crosby. So, maybe I'd switch them to no thanks. I'm not sure, though. And maybe I'd switch them to over. Maybe I have to boost them up. But I don't know. I don't love it. I just think there's so much new in such a tough division that I can't necessarily pin them down. Like, I can't necessarily bet it. So it makes me, like, not confident about the direction, right? So that I just had a bunch of lack of confidence right there. I like Pete. I like Chip. But I don't know. And I like Geno. So maybe I should be a little bit more excited about this team. It's just hard for me to see a team that's the worst in their division being better than like 7-10. And 7-10 would get them just over, barely just over. Just barely over by half a game. Maybe they will be 7-10. But that's why I can't bet it. I can't bet it either way. So it's like a no thanks for me. A no thanks, maybe even F that. I don't really want to get near it. The Packers. The Packers are also really tricky because the Packers are one of those teams that I think Vegas has nailed. So they're at 9.5, and I think the Packers will win 9 or 10 games. So, okay, and we look at their schedule, right? My first prediction for them was 10-7. I could easily see them going 9-8 though. I think at best they're 11-6, at worst they're 8-9. They're going to be within the range of 8 to 11 wins. They play their division, which of course is the Vikings twice, the Lions twice, the Bears twice. They lost to the Vikings and the Lions both times last year. Twice last year. They play the Commanders. They play the Cowboys in Dallas. They play Cincinnati at home. Arizona in Arizona. Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. The Eagles. We talk about the Lions. The Broncos in Denver. The Ravens. So this isn't an easy schedule. Their schedule last year was a lot more difficult. A lot more difficult. So I would have the Packers. I don't know what their defense is. I have a lot of questions there. I really like Matt LaFleur. I think that Jordan Love is inconsistent, but I do think he could have a really good year. I do really like their offense. Honestly, this is a team I want to stay far away from because their division is so difficult. That schedule is difficult. And, you know, you're relying on a receiver, like a rookie receiver, to be a go-to guy. And I don't know. It's more of like I can't really fade them because they consistently are good, but I can't really like go all in on them because I don't think I really saw it last year from them either. I felt like they were a little bit overrated last year. So I have them in the F that. I'm just going to say I'm not going to bet that. The Commanders, I'm also going to put in the F that. The Commanders are sitting at 9.5. I would lean towards the under on the Commanders at 9.5. I have them at 9-8. Okay? Now, a big problem for me is their defense. I don't believe in their defense. Terry McLaurin is currently holding out. What's going on there? They won a ton of close games, a ridiculous amount. They were ridiculous on fourth down. I don't know if that's replicatable. You look at their schedule. It's a lot more difficult this year compared to last. I do think 10 to 9 wins is manageable. So that's where I'm like, they're gonna be like the Packers. One of these teams will make the playoffs most likely, and one of these teams will miss the playoffs. And it will come down to, do they win 10 or do they win 9? And I don't want to bet against Jaden Daniels, so F that. I'm not doing it. Okay? So this is where I'm at, F that. Right? I have the under, but I don't want to bet it. Does that make sense? I have the under, but I don't want to bet it. So they play the Eagles twice, who they struggled against mightily last year. Can they win one of those games? The last game is in the last week of the year. Will that game matter? Maybe they can win that game just because the Eagles don't play anybody. I think they will lose to the Cowboys once. They did last year. I think the Giants will give them 2 tough games, but I think they should win at least one. The Broncos are tough. The Vikings in Minnesota is very tough. They play the Lions. They play the entire NFC North. So that's tough. So, yeah. They play Miami in a game in Spain, which is weird. So they have that weird travel. They play in Kansas City on a Monday night. Good luck. They play the Chargers on the road. A good trip there. That's tough. They play the Falcons, who went to overtime with them in Atlanta this year early. They play the Packers in Green Bay. They play the Raiders. So those are some tough games. They don't have an easy schedule this year. So I have them at 9-8, but I don't want to bet it whatsoever. I'm staying away from it. The Arizona Cardinals. They're at 8.5. I lean the over on the Cardinals. I like their schedule. I like their improvements defensively. But the 2 biggest elements of a football team are the most questionable elements of the Arizona Cardinals. What is Kyler Murray? And what is Jonathan Gannon? Okay? I have them at 9-8, so I would lean over. I've also talked about them being a dark horse playoff team, right? I think that they play the NFC South, so that's very manageable. They could beat the Panthers and or the Saints or both, right? Maybe they can beat the Bucs. That game's in Tampa, though, so it's going to be tough. And then, of course, they play the Falcons, which is probably an either-way game. And it happens to be in Arizona, so maybe you lean towards Arizona. They should be able to split with their division, but I don't know if that's a certainty. They play also the Bengals in Cincy, which is tough. They play Dallas in Dallas, which is tough. They play Green Bay. They play who else? Other than that, AFC South is pretty manageable as well. I do have them beating every team in the AFC South other than the Texans in Houston. So yeah, I lean the over, but I'm not confident in Kyler's consistency. The way that they finish seasons, they typically start strong and fade. And I'm not really even that confident in their current receiving core. And there's just a lot of questions about them, right? So I have Arizona as a lean. Pittsburgh is a principal over. Mike Tomlin does not have losing seasons. So out of principle, it's almost the reason I made this category. I'm going to bet them over 8.5. Okay? I have them at 9-8. Missing the playoffs, but at 9-8. I do think early in the year, they can get to 2-2 or 3-1. They play the Jets, which they should demolish. They play the Seahawks at home. I like that matchup for them at home. They play Pittsburgh early in the year. Or sorry, not Pittsburgh. They play New England early in the year in New England. That might be a loss, but it's not a for sure loss. And then they play Minnesota. They'll probably lose to New England or Minnesota. But the Minnesota game's in Pittsburgh against a rookie quarterback. Or no, it's not in Pittsburgh. It's in Ireland, I think, actually. But either way, it's against basically a rookie quarterback against the best front seven in football. That's a little scary if you're the Vikings. But I do think the Vikings could beat Pittsburgh. New England could beat Pittsburgh. Either way, they could be 2-2, 3-1 to start the year. Okay? They do play Cleveland twice, who they typically beat up on. They should be able to beat. This is where the Steelers are good. They're good against their division. They typically beat the Ravens once, and they typically beat the Bengals once. So that's helpful, right? They also play some pretty tough games against the entire NFC North, which is a tough division. They should beat Chicago at the very least. They do play Indy, which kind of has their number, but it's not a tough opponent necessarily. They do play Buffalo, which is tough. They do play Detroit, which is tough. They should beat Miami later in the year at home. Yeah, like, it's not a crazy schedule. Their schedule last year was more difficult, and they managed 10 wins. But they didn't feel like a 10-win team. They completely fell apart down the stretch. What I'm worried about is the offensive line, about the fragility of Aaron Rodgers, about the receiving core and the passing game. That's what I'm worried about. What I can lean into is I think they've got good coaching. They're going to be a tough football team that can grind out victories. They've got a really strong defense. They don't make a lot of mistakes. And I feel like Arthur Smith can put a manageable offense around Aaron Rodgers. So I have them at 9-8 out of principle. Next, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have an 11.5 win total. I would bet the Bills. I would bet my house on the Bills going over 11.5. First of all, Josh Allen, knock on wood. Now, this is obviously bold, because if Josh does get hurt, I'm fucked and I'm losing my house. But he has not gotten hurt very many times because he is an absolute monster. So it's difficult to injure him. The other thing that is also very comfortable about the Bills, they own their division. I expect them to go 5-1 in their division this year, maybe even 6-0. So that's 5 to 6 wins in their own division, first of all. When you look at their schedule, they play the NFC South, which they should sweep. Okay? They also play, because they play even Tampa at home, they should sweep that division. So that's 9 wins right there. So they play the AFC South, 5 wins, the NFC South, or the AFC East, 5 wins, and the NFC South, that's 4 wins. That's 9 wins already. We've got to get to 12. Okay? They play Baltimore at home. Now, keep in mind what I'm saying. Baltimore at home. Kansas City at home. Bengals at home. Philly at home. All the games are at home. In maybe the most difficult place to play, or one of the most difficult places to play in the NFL. Okay? They also can beat up on the Browns. They're going to kill the Steelers, because they always do. So they always beat the Chiefs, too. They always beat the Chiefs in the regular season. They haven't lost to them in years in the regular season. So as long as, I have them at 13-4. I have them losing to the Patriots in New England later in the year, the Texans in Houston, the Eagles, and the Bengals. That's what I have them doing. But let's say they could beat the Bengals and lose to the Chiefs. Or they could beat the Eagles and lose to the Bucks. Or they could, beat the Patriots twice and lose to Baltimore. I don't know. So it's a lot of good games at home, a lot of tough opponents at home. It's Josh Allen, it's the Buffalo Bills, consistently won the most games. Them, the Chiefs, and the Ravens are winning the most games every year. So they feel like a bet my house type of deal right there. Next, also, what I like about the Bills, and I know I keep going on and on, the Bills don't have one defensive player that if they lost him, I would be extremely concerned. And they also don't have one playmaker that if they lost him, I'd be extremely concerned. The only person on the Bills that if he got hurt would kill our entire thing is Josh Allen. That's it. Everyone else on their team, I still think they get 11 wins. Or 12 wins, sorry. Okay, the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are at 7.5. I have them under. This would be... I need to actually look at their schedule real quick. I have them at 7-10. They could easily go 8-9 or 6-11, but they have a sneaky difficult schedule when I last looked at it. So they play the NFC West, which is a difficult division. Seattle, San Fran, the Rams, and Arizona. I think on paper, all 4 of those teams are better than the Falcons. Now, I actually have the Falcons beating the Niners on my record prediction. I think that's the only team I have them beating in that division, though. The NFC South is weird because they swept the Bucs last year, but I don't think they'll do that this year. I do think the Panthers could beat them once because the Panthers have improved. I do think they should sweep the Saints, but they could lose to the Saints. I mean, it's a divisional opponent. Okay. So, and then they play some other games that I think are tough for them. They play Buffalo. They play New England in New England. They play Minnesota in Minnesota. I don't think the Jets will necessarily be easy, although the Jets are not a good team. So I have them under 7.5. This is a tough one for me because I don't necessarily know how good Penix is. I don't like Raheem Morris. I think he's the worst coach in the league. So I can't bet an over with him. The defense still has a lot of question marks. So this is one of those where I'm like, I don't even really want to touch it. I'm not even gonna, I don't know. I can't, I can't. Is Penix really good? Maybe. I don't really have that many ways of understanding if he is. I should go back and I probably will do a film study on Michael Penix to get to kind of firmly understand where I want to place this team. But even if I do that, there's been about 50 of his 50 throws that he's made. So I don't really know, Raheem Morris is probably the worst coach in the league. Him or Callahan, 100%. So this could be an F that or a no thanks. I just don't want to touch it. Plus the Falcons are one of those teams you never want to bet. Period. The Seattle Seahawks, they're at 7.5. I lean the under right now. I haven't really placed them in a category yet. I have them as the worst team in their division. And that I feel pretty strongly about. Seattle, also, kind of because they did well last year, they subtly have a tougher schedule than a lot of the teams in their division. So because Seattle finished second in their division, they play some tougher opponents than, let's say, San Francisco. San Francisco has a 4th place schedule. Seattle has a 2nd place schedule, right? So instead of playing the Giants, who the Niners play, the Seahawks play the Commanders in Washington. That's just one example, right? That's a big difference maker. So I look at Seattle and I'm not in love with their offense. I don't love their offensive line. I don't love Sam Darnold, especially behind a bad offensive line. Kenneth Walker's already banged up. We'll see how that goes. I'm not in love with their receiving core. Their defense I do really love, and I do really love Mike McDonald's defense, and I do think they're going to be very good. But I think this is a very tough division where they'll probably split in their own division. Otherwise, they play Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh. They play Tampa. They play Houston. My problem with those teams, they can all take advantage of Seattle's offensive line. That's concerning. Jacksonville in Jacksonville, going from west to east, is not easy against a good offense, right? A Liam Cohen offense. They play Washington and Washington, which I brought up. They play Tennessee and Tennessee, which is one of the easier games, but it's on the road. They play Atlanta in Atlanta. Again, that would be kind of one of the ones that you would want to win if you're at home, but it's on the road. They might lose that now. They play Minnesota at home, which is helpful, but not exactly the best matchup for Sam Darnold because they know him really well. They play Indy at home. They should win that game. They play Carolina later in the year, but that's also in Carolina. So it feels like a lot of the tougher opponents they actually play at home, right? So that's also kind of tough because they're not one of those teams where it's they struggled at home last year. That's usually a good thing, but the Rams are firmly better than Seattle. The Niners, I think, are firmly better than Seattle. The Texans, the Tampa Bucks, they're better than Seattle. I don't know if you necessarily want to play them at home. You'd almost rather just lose those games. So I have them at 7-10. I could see them at 8-9 though, which makes this difficult. So I'm gonna lean. This might be a no thanks. This might be a no thanks, but I'm gonna lean towards under 8, under 7.5. Lean, but I might go no thanks. We'll see where I land. The New England Patriots, 8.5 is their win total. Now, the Patriots have a lot of new stuff. They have a lot of turnover, a lot of change. New head coach, new OC, new offensive line, 4 out of 5 guys. New running back, Travion Henderson. New receiver 1, Stephon Diggs. They have a bunch of new playmakers on defense. Carlton Davis, Robert Spillane, Milton Williams, Harold Landry, to name a few. The Patriots are currently projected for 11 wins. I currently have them with 11 wins. Their win total is 8.5. That's a difference of 2.5 games. Now, guys, let me go over the games I have them winning so you understand their schedule. It's the second easiest in the NFL. I have them going 4-2 in their division, sweeping the Jets, and beating the Bills and Dolphins one time and losing to them the other time. So this is how I have the Patriots finishing their season. I have them beating the Raiders at home in week 1, losing to Miami in Miami, beating the Steelers at home in week 3, beating the Panthers at home in week 4, losing to the Bills in Buffalo, beating the Saints in New Orleans, beating the Titans in Tennessee, 2 of the worst teams in the league, arguably the 2 worst teams in their division and their conferences, back to back on the road, beating the Browns at home, another one of the easiest teams in the league. The Falcons at home, I have them beating. I have them losing to Tampa in Tampa. I have them beating the Jets on Thursday night, a short week, at home. I have them losing to Cincy in Cincy. I have them actually losing to the Giants at home on a Monday night, which is probably the one that I could pick them to win, that I have them losing. Then they have a bye. Then I have them beating Buffalo at home off of the bye. Then I have them losing to Baltimore in Baltimore, beating the Jets on the road, and beating the Dolphins in New England in the cold in the last week. Honestly, the more I look at that, that's very reasonable. That's very reasonable. I have them basically only beating the Bills. That is any good. Like, other than the Bills, I have them beating the Steelers, who some people might think is good, the Falcons. Other than that, who do I have them beating? And I have them winning 11 games. Guys, I'm betting my house on the New England Patriots going 8.5. I'm betting my house on it. Drake May's a stud. Mike Vrabel's a stud. Enough said. They're going to have a good defense. Their offense with Josh McDaniels is going to cook. Guys, I could give them 2 more losses and they'd still go over. I could give them losses against the Titans or the Falcons. Or, bro, like literally, look at their schedule. I could say they lose to the Steelers. Sure. Let's lose to the Steelers and lose to the Panthers. They're still going over. Bet my house on it. The Browns are up next. Their win total is 5.5, I believe. I would bet the under 5.5. Joe Flacco is projected to be the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. I would bet my house on an under 5.5 for the Cleveland Browns. Allow me to explain. Week 1, Cincinnati. Week 2, the Ravens in Baltimore. Week 3, the Packers. Week 4, Detroit in Detroit. Week 5, you have to go to Britain and play the Vikings defense. Week 6, you come back home after no bye and play the Steelers defense in Pittsburgh. Week 7, you play the Dolphins. The easiest game of the first 8 weeks is against the Miami Dolphins at home. Guys, Bengals, Ravens, Packers, Lions, Vikings, Steelers, Dolphins, then New England and New England. Then they have a bye. Then they get the Jets, but it's in New York, so it's not even an easy dub. Then they play the Ravens again. Then they play the Raiders in Vegas. Then they play the Niners. Then they play the Titans at home, the Bears on the road. Then they play the Bills, the Steelers again, and the Bengals again. Now, here's another reason. Not only could Joe Flacco go 0-5 to start the year, but also Joe Flacco's the best option they have. So after they sit him, they're going to have to play Kenny Pickett, who stinks. They're going to have to play Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders. And they're going to be on purpose losing games at the end of the year. So games against the Titans, they're not going to want to win that game. The Bears, they're not going to win that game. They're going to be trying to go for the first pick in the draft. They have 2 first-round picks. Guys, they're going to be losing on purpose. Losing on purpose. The Browns, bet your house. The Texans, in the thumbnail. Over 9.5 is the bet. Let's check. Currently, oh, by the way, guys, I have the Browns at 5-12, and that's being very kind. The Texans. I have them at 11-6, going 4-2 in their division, losing to Jacksonville and Indianapolis, sweeping Tennessee. Okay? I also have the Texans starting 2-3, and I still have them winning 11 games. Okay? I have them losing to LA in LA, Jacksonville in Jacksonville, Baltimore in Baltimore, the Broncos at home, the Colts in Indy, the Chiefs in Kansas City. Otherwise, I have the Houston Texans beating the Chargers on the road, which is a bit iffy, beating the Bills, which is a bit iffy, and beating the Niners, which is a bit iffy. But otherwise, I feel like this, and the Bucks, I guess, is a bit iffy, but that's a Monday at home. Jacksonville, I do think will beat them once. They've played them well over the last couple of years. I think the Jags will be a bit better than recent years. So I think that's why they beat them, period. Even if I look back at last year, I think they should have beat them once. Jacksonville should have beat them, but they blew that game, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, I had them at 11-6. I would say that the Texans are a lock to win over 9.5 games. They're in the easiest division in the league, arguably, that or the NFC South. They're far and away the best team in their division. They have far and away the best coach in their division. They have far and away the best quarterback in their division, and they have far and away the best defense in their division. They have won, 10 games 2 seasons in a row, if I'm not mistaken? They've also won a playoff game 2 seasons in a row. And their schedule is manageable. Yeah, they do play the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills. Right? That's tough. But again, they could get 4 to 6 wins in their own division pretty easily. They also, I think, will fare pretty well against the NFC West. I think they should go 2-2 at minimum. So, yeah. Not much else has to be said. Texans, I also think their offensive line, people are worried about their offensive line. It can't possibly be worse than last year. I'm expecting CJ Stroud to be better this year. I'm expecting their receiving core to be better this year because I think they have more depth. And I expect their defense to dominate. The Chiefs. Okay, so they're at 11.5, which is pretty high. I actually have them at 11-6. But, I kind of think I should bet the over if I were to bet anything, right? I'm not going to sit here and bet the under on the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not a fucking idiot. Okay? Like, I'm not a dumbass. All right? That being said, they do play the Eagles, who hammered them in the Super Bowl. They play the Chiefs in Brazil, or not the Chiefs, the Chargers in Brazil. They play Baltimore, they play Buffalo, they play Detroit, they play Washington, they play Denver in Denver. They play Dallas in Dallas on Thanksgiving. They play the Texans. Right? I think I actually have them at 11-6 right now. But that's also like projecting a couple upset losses. Like I have them losing to the Raiders. I have them losing to the Colts. That being said, I do have them beating the Ravens. They could easily lose to the Ravens. They could also easily lose to the Texans or the Broncos in Denver or something like that. But I think I would put the Chiefs. I think I would lean Chiefs over, or maybe even principal bet them over. But I'm not confident in it because I have them literally at 11-6. So I don't really know where to put these guys. The things I like about the Chiefs, I've risen on them as the offseason has gone on. I love their coaching. I think that the offensive line could be a bit better than last year and more consistent. I think their offense will be more potent than last year. I think Mahomes should statistically play better, but I think their schedule is actually a lot tougher than last year, just looking at it. I think I would principal bet the over on the Chiefs just because they're the Chiefs. But I'm not going to actually bet it. I'm not stupid. 11.5 is a big number in that division specifically. The Dallas Cowboys. I want no part of betting the Cowboys this year. I will say no thanks to betting the over 7.5. Maybe even lean. I'm between these two. You guys let me know in the chat what you think. Lean or no thanks, but I have them over 7.5. 7.5 does feel like a low number for Dallas with Dak Prescott. It does feel low, right? I have them at 8-9. That's my prediction for them. They do play a really tough schedule, though. They play the NFC North. They play the NFC East. And they play... who else did they play? Did they play the AFC West? No. They play the... Which AFC division do they play? The AFC West. So they play the AFC West and the NFC North. Wow. Yeah, that's hard. That's hard. That's arguably the two best divisions in the entire NFL. I still have them at 8. So, I'll give you which games I have them winning or losing. Either way, I don't know. But I have them, let's just go through their entire schedule so you guys know. I had them losing to the Eagles in the first game. I had them beating the Giants in week 2 at home. I had them losing to Chicago, which is a game they could win, but that's in Chicago. Packers, I have them losing to at home. So I have them starting 1-3. Actually 1-4, because I have them losing to the Jets in New York, which is probably unlikely. They'll probably beat the Bears or the Jets. I had them beating the Panthers and beating the Commanders in week 6 and 7. Then I have them losing to Denver in Denver. I have them beating Arizona at home on Monday night. Then I have them coming off the bye and winning another Monday night game against the Raiders in Vegas. Then I have them beating the Eagles once. I have them losing to the Chiefs on Thursday night, Thanksgiving. I have them losing to Detroit in Detroit. I have them beating the Vikings, which is also an iffy one. I have them losing to the Chargers, losing to the Commanders, and then beating the Giants. So this is, I think no thanks is fair because I could easily see them 7-10, 8-9, somewhere in that range. Their passing game is awesome. Their pass rush is awesome. Uncertainty at head coach, uncertainty on the offensive line, uncertainty in run defense, too many questions about this team. Okay? The Chargers are up next. Okay? Chargers, I actually feel strong about the Chargers at 9.5. This is a strong one for me. I think this is a lock for an over at 9.5. I have them with 11 wins this year right now, and I could maybe buy myself to 10. Either way, I feel confident about over 9.5. I really like the teams they match up with on their schedule, and I also like the spots for them. I like the way they play. I like how they're consistent. I like their formula, basically. I feel confident about their coaching and their infrastructure, and I feel confident about Justin Herbert. Okay? This is their schedule, and I'll go through why I have them at 11-6. I have them losing to the Chiefs in Brazil, so that's 0-1. Beating the Raiders in Vegas on Monday night, which is not going to be easy. I have them beating Denver at home. They swept Denver last year. I have them beating Denver at home, so they're 2-1. I actually have them losing to the Giants in New York. Cross-country, sleeper game. Lost that game. I have them beating the Commanders at home. I think they're better than the Commanders on defense. I have them, and I think they could run the ball on the Commanders. Week 6, I have them beating the Dolphins. Won't be an easy game in Miami. I have them beating the Colts at home. I have them beating the Vikings at home on a Thursday night. JJ versus Jim Harbaugh. I have them beating the Titans, beating the Steelers at home, beating the Jags. Then they have a bye, beating the Raiders again, sweeping the Raiders, which maybe that's one where I could have them losing once to the Raiders. That's fair. I do have them losing to the Eagles and losing to the Chiefs. So will they lose to both? Maybe, maybe not. Back-to-back games. I have them actually getting swept by the Chiefs. So this is 11 wins without even beating the Chiefs once. Keep that in mind. I also have them beating the Cowboys, losing to the Texans, who hammered them in the playoffs, and splitting with the Broncos, who they swept last year. So that guys is 11-6. That's 11-6. What I just said there. Splitting with Denver, who they swept, getting swept by the Chiefs, going 3-3 in their own division, and I have them losing to the Giants. I do have them beating the Commanders, the Vikings, the Steelers. Those are pretty tough games. But overall, their schedule is not that hard. Like, they can definitely... The thing I like about the Chargers is they'll beat a lot of the teams they're supposed to beat. That's what I like about them when it's fundamentals, right? Jets. The Jets... Okay, so I have them at 4-13. Their over-under is 5.5. So basically, they have to win 6 games to go over. They play, of course, the AFC East. I think they'll struggle to beat the Patriots and the Bills. And they have struggled against the Dolphins in recent years. I think they will beat the Dolphins once. But I have them 1-5 in their own division. Maybe they could beat New England, but I honestly don't think so. They play the AFC North as well. So they play Baltimore, the Steelers. Steelers in week 1, Aaron Rodgers' revenge game. They play the Ravens and the Bengals, both on the road. Good luck. And the Browns at home, which they should win that game. They also play the NFC South, which is a pretty easy division, but it's the Jets. So I have them winning, at one of the Saints or the Falcons games. I do have them losing to the Panthers and the Bucks. They also play in Britain against Denver. They're going to get hammered. I have the under, and I feel pretty confident about the under. I think Justin Fields sucks. I think Anthony Lynn is overrated, and he'll take some time to implement. The weapons are weak. The offensive line is young. The defense is mid. I think they're a lock to go under 5.5. Not a bet your house, though. Not quite. There could be, Fields could be better than he's been. Lynn could surprise me, right? The coaching could be much better this year, so that could surprise me. But that's why I won't put it at bet my house. Next, we have the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers, I don't really want to bet. I'm going to say no thanks to betting the Panthers at 6.5, but I would lean towards the under because I don't trust their defense. But I've said about the Panthers before, I have them at 6-11, but they feel like a 7-10 team, which is the tricky part, right? That's why I say no thanks. They play the AFC East, as we've mentioned before. They play the NFC West, which is pretty tough. And I have them 3-3 in their division. So maybe they could do a little bit better out of division. But it's not easy, man. Like the problem with the Panthers, right, is they play a lot of teams that are very close to their level. And I don't know whether they're going to beat those teams or lose to those teams. Let me just go through this. Jacksonville, for example. Who's better, Jacksonville or Carolina? Arizona or Carolina? Atlanta or Carolina? Miami or Carolina? Dallas or Carolina? Right? Seattle or Carolina? They play a lot of these teams, and that's what makes it really unbettable because they could win those games or lose those games. I don't know. So I can't bet it. The Tennessee Titans. I have the Titans under 5.5. I don't love it because Cam Ward is a stud. But they might be the worst team in the league on paper. They're bad. And Callahan sucks. So I will lean under with the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, I have them going 2-4 in their own division. They do play the AFC West and the NFC West. Good luck. Right? Good luck. So I would lean towards the under. I might even say that could be a good bet, but it depends on your perspective of Cam Ward. So I have the Titans beating the Saints at home, the Browns, Jacksonville, the Raiders, and the Colts. That's 5 wins. So if they win one more game, out of any of these opponents, they're going over. Denver, Rams, Texans twice, Cardinals in Arizona, Chargers, Patriots, Seattle, Niners, Chiefs, Jacksonville again. Could they beat any of those teams once? Could they get one upset? That would make them 6-11, so that makes it very iffy. So that's why I'll lean under, but it's not confident because I don't think they're a very good team. Next, we have the Indianapolis Colts. They're at 7.5, and I also have them under. I have them at 6-11, which feels low because they've been an 8-9 team. But I think that their quarterback play is atrocious. I have them 3-3 in their division. They're a talented team. But again, they play the AFC West and the NFC West this year. And it's even a tougher schedule than the Titans because they play more of a second place schedule rather than a last place schedule, right? So they also play a game in Germany against the Falcons. I have the Colts at, where do I want to put them? I kind of feel like I'm going to lean under. I think part of my problem is that Steichen has gotten to this team to 8-9 despite a lack of a good quarterback, and that scares me. I'd also say that their roster foundationally is good. They have a good defensive line, a solid offensive line, a good group of playmakers, a good OC, a good DC. They just don't have a quarterback. So it's really hard to bet the over or the under with a team that doesn't have a quarterback but has a good roster and is in a weak division but does face a tough schedule. So I was thinking about maybe it's a good bet to go under 7.5, but I can't be 100% confident based on recent past. And Jacksonville is also at 7.5. I'm going to say, I have them under just barely at 7 and 10. Jacksonville has been one of the worst franchises in sports in recent years, but there is stuff to be inspired by in Jacksonville this year. Liam Cohen as the head coach, Travis Hunter as a new playmaker, Trevor Lawrence healthy potentially. How does that offensive scheme potentially improve their offensive line? Brian Thomas Jr., a lot of things to look forward to on offense. Defensively, they're pretty bad. There's no doubt about it. But they also play the AFC West, the NFC West, two tough divisions. They play San Fran and San Fran, which is an added opponent for them. Or no, that's not added opponent. Who's the added opponent? Seattle? No, not Seattle. I'm stupid here. NFC. Who's the added opponent? Third. Let me see. I'm dumb. Carolina? That's not bad. They play them at home. Cincinnati is the added opponent in the AFC. That's pretty tough. I have them at 7 and 10. I have them beating the Texans once, the Panthers at home. I have them beating Seattle at home, the Rams as well, which is kind of like an upset, but I do have them losing to the Raiders, to be fair. I also have them beating the Colts and the Jets at home, and I have them beating the Titans at home. I have them going 3 and 3 in their division. This is a team I don't really know. I'm going to say no thanks. They're kind of like Carolina. There's a lot of, on the foundational elements, I like some of their upside, but I can't necessarily bet on it because it's the Jags. And I don't love this schedule. I don't love the divisions they play. So I can't necessarily go all in on Jacksonville to win 8 or 9 games. But they could be a sneaky team. A lot of smart people think Jacksonville is a sneaky playoff threat. But that's been the case for the last couple of years. So there it is, guys. My tier list for win totals. Based on must bet to don't bet it. Bet my house. I am betting the house. Oh, what do we got here? Why did it play? Can you guys hear that in the background? So, anyways. Bet my house. I've got the Saints under 5.5. The Bills over 11.5. The Patriots over 8.5. And the Browns under 5.5. Locks. These are good bets to make. The Ravens over 11.5. The Bears under 8.5. The Niners over 10.5. The Texans over 9.5. The Chargers over 9.5. And the Jets under 5.5. Everything in between there. And then at the bottom, the teams that I simply do not want to bet. The Packers at 9.5 either way. The Commanders at 9.5 either way. The Falcons, because they're the Falcons, at 7.5. I'd rather not bet the Broncos at 9.5, the Raiders at 6.5, the Cowboys at 7.5, the Panthers at 6.5, or the Jags at 7.5. Now, this is just my opinion. Some people might feel very strongly about Jacksonville over 7.5, or the Panthers over 6.5, or the Raiders over 6.5. So let me know, guys, in the comments what you agree with, what you disagree with. What are your favorite win totals to bet? What are your least favorite win totals to bet? That is my confidence meter right there. It doesn't mean how good the team is or how bad the team is. It simply means, would I bet your win total or would I not bet your win total? That's all it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Appreciate ya. It's Mitch. We'll see you in the next video. Good luck on your bets. Deuces. Gronk spiked the like button, jabroni.